Medical Officer Rawlith moved through the room with her usual grace. Like most of her Serum kind, she was tall and willowy, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly under artificial light. Her slender fingers were made for precise surgical work, not the heavy labor other species might perform. Her people were healers, diplomats, and scholars, rarely warriors, but today had tested even her steady hands. Hours earlier, a skirmish with a pirate raiding party had left several crew members injured. She had been working nonstop, sealing plasma burns, resetting fractured limbs, administering pain suppressors. Now, finally, the flood of patients had slowed. She let out a long breath, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension in her neck. That's when she noticed it. On the far corner of the counter, half hidden behind a med tray of diagnostic tools, sat a small metallic flask. It was unlike any standard issue Coalition medical container. Instead of the neat blue and silver markings of regulated supplies, this flask was matte black, with only a small engraving, a stylized eagle clutching lightning bolts, unmistakably human military. Iconography. She had seen it before. It belonged to Sergeant Daniel Keene, the human combat medic assigned to Varesh's Light. Daniel was a curiosity to her, blunt-spoken, physically imposing, and like all humans carrying an aura of dangerous unpredictability. She had noticed how he kept the flask close even during medbay shifts, slipping it into a pocket as though it were more valuable than his sidearm. She had once asked about it. He had simply smiled and said, "Emergency, pick me up," and changed the subject. Now, with no one else in the room, her curiosity gnawed at her. Humans were infamous for their assortment of caffeinated and alcoholic concoctions, some of which could drop a Serum unconscious or send a Viren into a week-long fever. But Daniel had made it sound harmless, almost like a personal indulgence, and Rawlith was tired, bone-deep tired. Her eyelids felt heavy, her legs wobbled from standing. For hours, she still had another shift ahead before she could rest. A small sip, she reasoned, couldn't possibly hurt. She approached the counter, her gaze lingering on the smooth surface of the flask. It was cool to the touch, heavier than she expected. The faint metallic tang from the cap hinted at something potent within. Unscrewing the lid, she hesitated. "Just a taste," she murmured to herself. The moment the liquid touched her tongue, her first thought was heat. Not the burning heat of alcohol or the sharp bite of strong spice. This was different. It was a wave of warmth that seemed to crawl across her mouth and down her throat, spreading like molten metal into her chest. She swallowed reflexively, and the sensation ignited into something electric. Her breath caught. Her vision shifted. The medbay seemed clearer, the edges of every object more defined. The hum of the equipment slowed, as though each sound stretched out, giving her more time to notice it. She could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears, every beat stronger and faster than the last. She gripped the counter, knuckles whitening. "By the moons." "What?" The medbay doors hissed open, and Daniel walked in mid-sentence, only to stop dead when he saw her holding the flask. His expression went from confusion to alarm in an instant. "Ral," he said sharply, stepping forward, "tell me you didn't just drink from that." She blinked at him, trying to steady her breathing. I only took a sip." Daniel swore under his breath in his native tongue, the sound sharp and guttural. "That wasn't coffee," he said grimly. "That was a combat serum. Human military. Issue, not for you. Not for anyone who isn't trained for it." She tried to focus on his words, but the strange, exhilarating rush flooding her body made it hard to listen. Her pulse was racing faster still, and there was a restless, coiled energy in her limbs that begged for action. Daniel's voice cut through the haze, low and urgent. "That stuff keeps humans fighting through blood loss, broken bones, and 3 days without sleep. It's not a drink, it's a weapon. At first, it was just her senses sharpening. The medbay's crisp white light seemed brighter, every shadow defined. She could see the fine scratches on the metal floor plates, the subtle patterns of heat radiating from the sterilizers. The faint hum of the ship's engines, a background noise she normally ignored, now sounded like the deep pulse of some massive, living creature. Then the second wave hit. Her muscles tightened involuntarily, like coiled cables straining under tension. The weak, delicate frame of a Serum felt suddenly wrong, as if it had always been shackled, and now those restraints had fallen away. She flexed her fingers, watching the tendons shift under her skin, and felt power. Real power. Daniel's voice cut through her thoughts, careful but firm. "Rel, you need to listen to me. Your physiology isn't built for this serum. For humans, it's contained, controlled. For you, it's going to push your system past its limits." She heard him, but his words didn't feel urgent. What felt urgent was movement. Her body demanded it. She wanted to run, to leap, to smash. Something. The medbay suddenly felt too small, too slow, too quiet. Every sound beyond the room called to her crew boots striking the deck plating several rooms away. The hiss of hydraulic doors cycling open on the upper levels, the faint vibration of power conduits along the starboard corridor. Her mind mapped them instantly, like she had always known where they were. Her tail lashed once, sharply. Her breathing quickened. Daniel took a cautious step toward her, hands raised. "Don't give in to it. The serum's not just physical, it messes with your instincts. Makes you want to burn yourself out. Humans trained for months just to fight. That urge." His voice was clear, but her body didn't want to stay still and listen. It wanted action. The air itself felt thick, pressing against her skin, begging her to push back. She shifted her weight to the balls of her feet, every muscle quivering with readiness. Then the alarm blared. It was a deep, resonant klaxon, echoing through the ship's corridors, signaling a breach. The sound hit her like an electric current. Instant clarity, instant purpose. Her head snapped toward the door before her mind fully processed what the alarm meant. Somewhere on the ship, danger had arrived. Somewhere there were enemies. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with something far more primal, hunger. Daniel's eyes widened. Rel don't, but the medbay's sensor barely had time to register her movement before she was gone. The corridor outside blurred around her as she moved. She wasn't just running, she was flowing, covering distance in long, effortless strides that devoured meters in seconds. Her bare feet struck the deck plates like hammer blows, but there was no pain, only precision. She didn't need to think about where she was going. The alarm's directional pulses, the distant echoes of boots and shouted orders, the faint metallic tang of weapons fire. Her senses pieced them together into a clear path toward the intruders. Crew members she passed barely registered more. Then a streak of pale skin and flashing eyes. Someone shouted her name, but the voice was lost to the roar of her own pulse. The serum wasn't just amplifying her body, it was reshaping her mind. Every step felt perfectly timed. Every movement anticipated. She could imagine the moment before it happened, see the arc of an enemy's weapon before they even swung it. The logical, methodical healer inside her was silent now. In her place was something sharper, faster, and infinitely more dangerous. Third surge came just as she rounded the corner to Deck 5, where the emergency lights painted the walls in harsh crimson. Her peripheral vision widened, catching details she shouldn't have been able to notice, the minute shift of shadows behind a half-open hatch, the faint flex of a door seal under external pressure. She could hear footsteps, fast and heavy, closing in from the maintenance corridor. Her lips pulled into a slow, dangerous smile. The intruders came in hard. The first Wave 6 lean, sharp-toothed Turk scavengers slipped through the breach with plasma rifles raised. Behind them lumbered a towering Viren mercenary, his broad shoulders scraping the hatch frame, a humming energy axe clutched in both clawed hands. The plan was simple: push through fast, disable resistance, and hold the corridor until reinforcements arrived from their ship, but they weren't prepared for her. It hit them like a kinetic projectile. She didn't slow, didn't hesitate. One moment the pirates were advancing, the next their front line was scattering under the force of something fast and pale and utterly relentless. The first Turk barely had time to register her before she wrenched his plasma rifle sideways, twisting with a sharp pivot of her hips. The weapon flew from his hands, clattering across the deck. She kept moving, letting the momentum carry her into a brutal shoulder check that sent him slamming into the bulkhead hard enough to dent it. He slid down in a limp heap. The second pirate fired. She was already moving, her body dropped low, one hand hitting the deck for balance as she twisted under the sizzling bolt. The smell of scorched metal filled her nostrils. She came up inside his guard and drove her knee into his chest with a force that lifted him clear off the ground before he crashed back down, gasping for air. The serum didn't just make her faster, it made her precise. She wasn't swinging wildly. Every strike had purpose. Every movement flowed into the next like an unbroken chain. The healer's knowledge of anatomy, normally used to mend, was now being applied to disable. Two more Turk came at her in a pincer maneuver, one from each side. She didn't slow. Stepping forward, she grabbed the first by the forearm, twisting sharply until the joint popped. The pirate screamed, dropping his weapon, just in time for her to hurl him into his partner. Both went down in a tangled heap of limbs and curses. Now only the Viren remained standing. He was massive, nearly 2.5 meters tall, plated in thick hide and muscle, his species infamous for their durability in close combat. His energy axe hummed with a menacing red glow as he stepped over the fallen Turk, eyes narrowing on her. Rawlith felt her pulse surge, the serum's rush hitting another peak. She could feel every microshift in his stance, every twitch of his weapon hand. She knew exactly when he was going to swing before he even moved. The axe came in fast, a diagonal arc meant to cleave her in two. She sidestepped, the blade hissing past her face close enough for her to feel the heat. Before he could recover, she lunged forward, slamming her palm into the side of his knee. The joint buckled under the sudden force, the Viren dropping to one side with a roar. She didn't let him rise. Spinning behind him, she hooked her forearm under his throat and pulled, cutting off his air. The massive alien thrashed, clawing at her arm, but the serum's boost made her grip like steel. 30 seconds later, he slumped unconscious. The corridor was still. Her breath came in deep, sharp pulls. Around her, the pirates lay scattered, groaning, unconscious or too dazed to rise. The crimson emergency lights painted the scene in shades of blood and shadow, the air thick with the smell of scorched metal and ozone. She looked down at her hands, still trembling not from fear, but from the intoxicating need to keep moving. Every muscle in her body screamed for more. The fight had lasted less than 2 minutes, and she wanted another one immediately. Somewhere down the hall, she heard footsteps, crew members rushing toward the breach. For a fleeting moment, she considered charging toward the next threat before they could get there first, and that thought scared her. Not because she feared losing control, but because she didn't want to stop. The pirates were gone, either unconscious, disarmed, or dragged away by responding security teams. The crimson emergency lights still pulsed along the corridor walls, painting the aftermath in shifting shades of blood and shadow. The scent of scorched metal and discharged plasma lingered in the air, mingled with the faint, coppery tang of blood. Rawlith stood in the center of it all, her chest rising and falling with deep, sharp breaths. She didn't feel tired, not yet. In fact, she felt wired, every nerve in her body still thrumming like a high-tension cable. Her muscles itched to move, to do something. The serum was still in full effect. Her vision seemed too sharp, too bright, and the slow movements of the crew around her were almost unbearable. She could hear their voices echoing down the corridor, could track each footstep with uncanny precision. She wanted more. More enemies to fight, more motion, more of that perfect alignment between body and instinct. That was when she heard her name. Ral! Daniel's voice cut through the static in her mind. She turned sharply, faster than she meant to, and saw him jogging down the corridor toward her, eyes flicking rapidly between her and the downed pirates. His expression was a mix of disbelief and alarm. He slowed as he approached, hands slightly raised as though she were a wild animal he didn't want to startle. "You've got to stop," he said, his tone low but urgent. "You're running on fumes you don't even know you've got. The serum's doing the work, but your body is seconds away from paying for it." Her pulse spiked at the thought of stopping. "No," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I can still fight." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Ral, look around you. The fight is over." But it didn't feel over. The rush in her blood made her certain there was more to do, somewhere, just out of reach. The idea of standing still felt wrong. Her tail lashed once against the deck, betraying her agitation. "You don't understand," she said, taking a step toward him. "I've never moved like this. Everything is clear. I know exactly what to do before it happens. I can't. Just," she broke off, clenching her fists. "I can't turn it off." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "That's the point. You're not supposed to want to turn it off. The serum doesn't just enhance your body, it rewires your instincts, makes you crave the fight. Humans learn how to fight that craving before we're ever allowed to use it. You haven't had that training. You're letting it drive you." His words landed heavily, but the pulse in her veins still roared louder than his voice. She realized she was standing too close to him now, her posture tense, ready for movement. Not ready to attack him, never that, but ready for something. The serum had sharpened every part of her, and it didn't care that the danger was gone. Daniel studied her, his eyes hardening with decision. "If we don't purge it from your system now, your heart's going to give out. You'll feel fine right up until it stops beating. I'm not letting that happen." For a long moment, she just stared at him, torn between the urge to resist and the flicker of reason that told her he was right. The serum had filled her with power, but it was borrowed power and every loan had a price. Finally, with a shuddering breath, she let him take her arm. His grip was firm but careful, guiding her away from the chaos. As they moved down the corridor, her gaze kept flicking toward every sound, every shadow, every possible hint of movement. The urge to break away and do something gnawed at her like hunger. Daniel didn't say anything more until they reached the medbay. Only then did he release her arm and start pulling supplies from the detox cabinet. "You're lucky," he muttered as he set up the infusion line. "Most non-humans don't last long enough for someone to drag them back alive." She sat on the bed reluctantly, still restless, still feeling the phantom echoes of the fight in her bones. The serum's fire was fading, but slowly, too slowly, and in the quiet between them, she realized the truth Daniel had been trying to tell her. The serum wasn't just a weapon for the enemy. It was a danger to the one who used it. The detox process was long, uncomfortable, and brutally sobering. Rawlith lay in the medbay's isolation ward, the steady rhythm of the biomonitors beside her bed a stark contrast to the racing pulse she had felt only hours before. Now, each beep seemed painfully slow. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced, not the sharp pain of injury, but a deep, throbbing fatigue, as if every muscle fiber had been torn down and rebuilt under strain. Daniel sat at her side, arms folded, watching the readings with a grim sort of patience. He had hooked her up to an intravenous drip containing a complex mix of human and coalition compounds, designed to flush the serum from her bloodstream. The bag had to be replaced twice already, the toxins bleeding out of her system slower than he liked. The room was quiet except for the faint hiss of the 4-pump. How bad was it? She finally asked, her voice low, rough from dehydration. Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he checked the monitor, adjusted the drip, and only then looked at her. Bad enough, he said. That was less than a quarter of a standard combat dose, and it almost stopped your heart twice during the purge cycle. She blinked, startled. Twice? I didn't even feel. Yeah, that's the point, he cut in. That serum's not designed to warn you when you're at the edge. It's designed to push you past it. Humans can train their bodies to withstand it for a while, but a Serum? No natural resistance, no combat conditioning. You were running on borrowed time. She lay back against the pillow, staring up at the ceiling. His words made sense. She had known from the moment he'd named the serum that she had done something reckless. And yet, her hands tightened around the thin blanket. It felt? She hesitated, searching for the word. Exhilarating. Like I was more alive than I've ever been. Like my body wasn't mine anymore, it was something better. Stronger. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's the danger. People think it's strength, but it's not. It's desperation in a bottle. It's for when you have no other choice, when you're already dying and you just need to take the enemy with you before you go down. She turned her head toward him, her eyes still sharp despite the fatigue. Then why give it to soldiers at all? He didn't flinch at the question. Because sometimes it's the only thing that keeps them alive long enough to make a difference. The serum doesn't care about comfort or safety or even survival after the fight. It just makes sure you finish the fight. They were silent. For a while after that, Ralith thought back to the fight on Deck 5, the way every move had felt like instinct, how she had known exactly what to do without hesitation. The pirates had been faster, stronger, and armed, but they might as well have been standing still. It had been terrifying and beautiful, and now it was gone. The serum's rush had faded completely, leaving only a hollow ache in its wake. She hated to admit it, but part of her missed it already. Her voice was softer when she spoke again. If that's what you call survival, I can't imagine what you humans call war. Daniel didn't reply immediately. His gaze shifted from her to the distant wall, as if remembering something far away or far worse. Finally, he said, war is what happens when survival isn't enough. When you stop fighting just to live and start fighting to win. His tone was so quiet she almost missed it. Ralith studied him for a long moment. She had served alongside. Humans before treated them, learned their anatomy, memorized their strange idioms, but she had never truly understood them until now. They didn't just prepare for danger. They built tools to become danger when the moment came, and in the silence that followed, she realized why the Coalition treated human combat technology with the same wary respect they gave to their most devastating weapons. The serum wasn't just a chemical, it was a glimpse into the human will to endure. No matter the cost. As the detox drip continued its slow work, Ralith closed her eyes. Her pulse had finally returned to a steady rhythm. But the memory of that other rhythm, the pounding, unstoppable surge that had carried her through the boarding fight, was etched into her bones.